All these years I've been like, yes, eat the Wise Traditions diet. I'm still all about that. But what I did not know is that the mitochondria in our cells, these are little engines that kind of keep our body functioning properly. 2/3 of their energy comes from the sun and 1/3 comes from food. In other words, it is just as critical, if not more so, for us to get exposed to the sun to give that energy to the mitochondria as it is for us to eat well. So this is mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing.
From the Weston A. Price Foundation, welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
Hey everybody, my name is Marisa Moon, and I'm your guest host for this special edition of the Wise Traditions podcast. This is episode 200, and our guest today is Hilda Labrada Gore. Yep, the host and producer of this Wise Traditions podcast. I'm behind the mic today because we are celebrating the milestone of 2 million downloads on this show. And as part of the celebration, we decided to turn the tables and get Holistic Hilda on the Wise Traditions podcast as a guest. Hilda is the DC chapter leader for the Weston A. Price Foundation. She's a certified integrative nutrition health coach and a podcast coach. She's the author of Podcasting Made Simple, and she just recently launched her Holistic Hilda YouTube channel. Hilda's a passionate and enthusiastic advocate for ancestral health. She explores ancestral wisdom through experts, experiences, and epic adventures, of course. And she helps us figure out how we can apply what she's learned into our lives today. So today, you get to hear Hilda's top tips for healthy living. She discusses the power of sunlight, for instance, and how that can help rev up our mitochondria. She tells us about the foods that her family started eating when they first switched over to a Wise Traditions diet. And she shares the strategies for transitioning to this diet if it's brand new to you. Hilda also tells us about the story of her birth defect that made her parents think she might not even make it. I have to say, I was blown away. And before we get into it, there's one more unique aspect to this episode. We're including a few testimonials from you. We couldn't have made it to 2 million downloads without you listening to our show and sharing it with others. So it's time to hear how Wise Traditions has affected your life.
Greetings from the South Island of New Zealand. There have been so many great episodes on the Wise Traditions podcast, but one of my favorites so far would have to be Joel Salatin, Worldwide to Hyperlocal. The reason I enjoyed this podcast episode so much is because it covers the intersection between politics, our farming practices, and our food. He is one of the top regenerative farmers in the world, and his work is part of what has inspired me to create a pastured poultry farm business. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Rachel Rivera from Stratford, Connecticut, and I love to listen to the Weston A. Price podcast. I listen to podcasts at least once every day, and my favorite episode was number 183, Is Sunscreen Safe to Use? I've always heard about this topic, but I didn't really know a lot about it, and I love how they break down how sunscreen really affects not only our bodies, but also coral reefs, which is something I had no idea about. And I just think it's so interesting that they have a wide variety of topics. There's always something that I can find to listen to that's beneficial to me and my family, and I hope they keep it up.
Thank you for listening and for sharing why you love this show. And now for a quick shout out to our sponsors, Bovine Tracheal Cartilage with Liver by Ancestral Supplements. Putting back in what the modern world has left out. New Zealand-sourced nose-to-tail organ meats and bone marrow in these convenient gelatin capsules based on the ancient wisdom of like supports like. You can order yours today at ancestralsupplements.com. And a reminder that the Wise Traditions Conference is fast approaching, you guys. It's November 15th to the 17th and just north of Dallas, Texas. Make sure you sign up today at wisetraditions.org and use the coupon code WT Podcast for $20 off of your registration. That's WT for Wise Traditions, WT Podcast. The Wise Traditions Conference is where ancient wisdom meets modern science. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Hilda. It's great to have you here.
Oh my gosh, this is so weird, Marisa. I'm the one that's supposed to say
I
that.
know. Well, you can go ahead and say it if you really want.
Welcome to Wise Traditions, Marisa.
Thanks.
Seriously, I'm so thankful that you offered to interview me for a change, and it's kind of fun to do this special episode.
Oh, you deserve to be in the spotlight because you are one of the reasons this show is changing so many lives. And I just want to say congrats to you guys for hitting that 2 million download milestone. That's huge.
Oh my gosh, I can't even wrap my head around that. Like it exceeded my expectations for sure.
Well, I just want to say you are hands down one of my favorite podcast hosts. You do such a good job at representing the listener, and you ask the most helpful questions. Your personality and your passion really shines through. I bet you people listening right now are like nodding their heads and like, yes, I always feel like she speaks for me because you do, Hilda. So thank you.
Oh, that is so sweet, Marisa. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I wonder, what has it been like learning from all these experts and podcasting for so many years now?
Well, it's been amazing. This is the thing. I studied to be a health coach through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I'm a fitness professional. I work for a company called Body and Soul. So I already had this health and wellness background, right? And I was a member of the Weston Price Foundation. So I had that information. But suddenly, to actually be able to directly speak with these experts and gain more knowledge has been amazing, not just for the audience, but for me. Like, I have so many takeaways. You know, at the end of every episode, I do say, if the listener could do one thing. And so I have all these, literally a long list of one things I could be doing. And I hope today I'll get a chance to share my top tips, like what I've really walked away with, because these are actionable health practices that have changed my life.
Oh, I'm sure. I hope you keep those somewhere safe because that can make a great book one day, girl.
I've thought about that. Trust me, I've thought about it.
Well, I'm kind of wondering, how did the Weston A. Price Foundation come into your life to begin with?
Oh, that's a really good question. It wasn't the usual route. In other words, a lot of times people will come to the foundation because they're sick or, you know, they have some health concern and they Google eczema and we pop up. But in this case, it was my dearest friend who had chronic fatigue, and the doctors just had no answers for her. So after, you know, exhausting every conventional treatment pretty much, she decided to start tweaking her diet. And so she went macrobiotic. She tried, you know, vegetarianism. She tried all these different things. And she finally hit upon the Wise Traditions diet. She actually met Sally Fallon Morell at a health fair. And she was like, oh my gosh, this woman is glowing with health. I want what she has. And the cool thing was, Sally wasn't selling a particular product or shake. It was just an approach of looking to the past for good health today. And so as my friend's health changed, she started kind of pointing the way for me. And I was like, yeah, this makes sense to me. Like, let's eat as our ancestors did. And I was off to the races.
It really just hits home when you start connecting all the dots, doesn't it? You start making sense of it all and like, you just don't look back.
You don't. And I actually started, I was telling a friend this the other day, I really just wanted raw milk. I thought, okay, I want to put raw milk on the table for my family. Little did I know, you know, that would become not just raw milk, but eggs and then pastured meat and, you know, going down the rabbit hole, but in an amazing way to provide the best for my family. And so I wouldn't recommend that people do a complete overhaul because for some people that could be overwhelming. I know for me, I was just like, okay, where do I start? This is too much, you know? So like I said, I started with raw milk and also butter. I just got rid of the fake stuff and started putting real butter on the table. And my family did not complain. As a matter of fact, they were thrilled because it tastes so good.
I don't know if you were like me, but I gave up butter for so long. By the time I was able to have it again, I guess you could say, it was just like a celebration. And you actually have such an impactful health story that started when you were a young child, didn't it?
Yeah. So I almost feel like it's a miracle that I'm just alive. And maybe that's why I want to make the most of the time that I have. So basically what happened was when I was in my mother's womb, she was exposed to the German measles. And the doctors told her, oh my gosh, your baby is going to be born with a serious birth defect. And It was a hole in my heart, a hole between the lower two ventricles. So the blood was flowing in a direction that it shouldn't have been flowing. And so the doctors kind of monitored me over the years. And when I was 9 years old, they performed open heart surgery.
Oh.
And they said if they wouldn't have, I would have died at a young age because I guess the blood wasn't getting properly oxygenated. It was going the wrong direction. And so I'm thankful for modern medicine, but I'm also thankful for the ways in which I can strengthen my body naturally. And on a side note, Sally herself has told me that if my mother had had more vitamin A in her diet, this birth defect might have been avoided altogether. In other words, my mother's nutrition certainly wasn't the best, and that's probably one of the reasons I was born as I was.
If we only knew the things that we know now and could share that with all of our family. But here we are today, spreading the message in a big way, and Wise Traditions is just literally changing lives. I'm sure you have so many tips that you've taken away from the show, and I hope you have a few to tell us about today.
I do. And, like I said, I have over 190 episodes. So I probably have over, because there's some that haven't even aired. So 225 tips. But I'm going to share with you right now just some of my top ones that blew me away. The first one surprised me so much. It was from an early episode with Will Winters, who is a veterinarian, a holistic veterinarian. And he used to be a vegetarian. And I just love that all these things rhyme. I don't know if he was a Presbyterian. But anyway, the point about Will Winters is, he told me not to take anything at face value. He said, you've got to educate yourself. And this shocked me because I thought we had spent the whole episode talking about, pastured meat and why it's so much better for you and the nutritional composition of it compared to the meat that comes from a concentrated animal feeding operation. And I said, what's one thing we can do to improve our health? And he's like, educate yourself. And I was like, what? So that blew me away. And so I've taken that to heart. Not only him, but Tom Cowan also said, be skeptical. Don't even believe me. Like, look into it. And I think this is the most important tip because people are bombarded with information, Marisa, as you know. We're just like surrounded by another fad, another trend, another smoothie, another kind of get slim quick scheme, if you will. And the best thing we can do is to really do our research and not take anybody's word for it. And we also need to look for the money trail. In other words, are they telling me this because they genuinely want my health to be good? Or are they telling me this because they have a special product that's going to answer all my problems, And I really think we need to pay attention. This is one reason I actually love the Weston Price Foundation. They're not beholden to anybody. They don't get money. Some people are like, oh, they must get money from the meat industry. No, they don't. They just get donations and gifts from members, and they sail through because they are bringing the best information to people. But anyway, so my first tip is actually educate yourself.
Yeah, and I think just when you're trying to educate yourself, you don't know where to turn. Do you have any tips for the listeners, like maybe some basic ways that they should always be digging for the truth?
I think we can also trust our own intuition more than we realize. I think we discount how foods make us feel and the energy we get from them because we don't want to believe it. For example, I have a friend who said to me recently, oh my gosh, Hilda, I just listened to one of your podcasts and now I know I shouldn't have kale unless it's cooked or prepared with some lime juice. In other words, there are anti-nutrients in some of these vegetables that actually need to be set aside so that we can get the most out of them, right? So, and combining, of course, with oils and fats and all this. So she was telling me, I used to feel so healthy eating kale, but at the same time, she had digestive issues with it, but she didn't recognize it because she didn't want to believe that because everyone says kale is a superfood. So I would say pay attention to how your body responds to foods, and that may help you as well. And I would also say look for the most natural choices. Are there, kind of paleo approved granola bars? Are there, heart healthy choices that have only 5 ingredients? Yes, but why not just get those ingredients yourself and experiment with making your own granola, So these are some of the recommendations I would give people.
It's very foundational, I think. Just staying curious, asking questions, and connecting with your food choices. So that's wonderful.
Excellent. So do you want another
Oh my
tip?
gosh, keep going, please.
Well, this one is actually one of the first ones from Dr. Price. He said that we shouldn't have refined or denatured food. And it goes along with what I was just telling you. Like, let's avoid the processing or the over processing and stick with more simple, whole, real foods. And of course, for those who don't know, Dr. Price is the amazing dentist and researcher who traveled around the world in the 1930s. He was trying to find the healthiest people. As a dentist, of course, he was looking at their teeth. He was interested in seeing the incidence of cavities in indigenous people and crowding of teeth and all that. But what he found was the people who were the healthiest had the most amazing teeth. He said the teeth tell the tale. And so he could also see that they were hale and hardy and fertile. And so he started comparing these indigenous people who were kind of untouched by modern society and food choices with those who had changed their diet and incorporated some more modern refined flour and sugar and oils, and he could literally see the difference. He documented a lot of this in his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. So this tip is to embrace real food and eliminate processed food. And again, even on the packages that say, oh, this has natural flavorings and colorings, some of those are really just concocted in a factory, and our body doesn't know what to do with it. Some have even postulated that it's those chemicals and flavorings and preservatives that are poking holes in our gut and leading to leaky gut and gut dysbiosis and all sorts of problems. So by embracing real food and eliminating processed food, we will go far in restoring our health.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a great tip. And just by doing that, wouldn't you say people can already feel and notice big changes in their health and their family's health?
Oh, absolutely. And we have a lot of young moms who follow us on this podcast and follow the foundation. And there are also some young moms I've had on the show. And I think of Robin Shirley, for example. She has run the Take Back Your Health conference on the West and East Coast. And she said, food is a strong foundation. And I know that she turned her own health around using real food. And now she has been blessed with a little baby, Olivia. And so it's amazing to see the changes that can come just from this one switch.
Oh, I believe it. And maybe some people listening right now are like, I'd really like to do that, but I'm just too busy. I don't have time. Have you learned any tips regarding adding whole foods to your diet when you don't have time?
I can relate, let me just say. And it doesn't get any easier. My kids are older now, and it's still, I feel super, super busy. It is worth the investment of time, just like you would go to the hospital to visit your grandmother if she wasn't feeling well. You know what I mean? Like, we can make the time, we can find the time to prepare nourishing foods for our family. So this is what I do. I cook once, but use that food for several meals. So I made the other day a sirloin tip roast that I got from the farmer, and really didn't know how to cook that cut of meat, but I just ordered it one day in a moment of inspiration. So I covered it with a bunch of herbs, stuck it in the oven, and then a few hours later, there it was. But we were heading out to go be with some family. Well, anyway, long story short, I cut up the meat the next day, and we just heated up some of the slices with some eggs and some kimchi or something for dinner. Then my plan tonight is to cut some of the rest of it into little cubes, put it on some skewers with some tomatoes and onion, and have them as kebabs. And then another night, because this is one big piece of meat, I'm probably going to have fried rice, and use broth for the rice. And so don't overdo it in the kitchen. I get it that everybody's busy, but my suggestion is to cook less often, but cook enough quantity so it lasts for several nights. And that will help you save time, and then you'll know what you're having the next night.
Yeah, and the things that you mentioned there, putting a couple of vegetables on the skewer, adding it with rice. I mean, this isn't like some complex recipe that you need all these ingredients for. You can literally use that leftover steak to throw something together. You're not overcomplicating things.
Exactly. And my friend Hilary Boynton, who I've also had on the show, has said all the time, simplicity is gourmet. And I agree. Tell me if this isn't right, Marisa. When you have a good cut of meat or some amazing farm fresh eggs, you don't need to do a lot to them to make them amazingly tasty and nourishing.
I couldn't agree more. And I always tell people, if you have garlic, fresh garlic, not that stuff that's minced and in a jar with liquid, that doesn't count. If you have fresh garlic and you have butter, you have good extra virgin olive oil and sea salt, man, you could make so many things taste amazing. Add in just a little vinegar or lemon. Am I talking about a delicious dish already, Hilda, or what?
My mouth is watering. Absolutely.
It just doesn't have to be hard. You just work with a few flavorful things like garlic and sea salt and butter, and man, you can turn some stuff out.
It's true. It's really true.
Coming up, Hilda sheds some light on why light is so important to our bodies and how to best utilize sun exposure for good health.
You're listening to the Wise Traditions podcast from the Weston A. Price Foundation. We pause now to recognize our sponsors.
Bovine tracheal cartilage with liver by Ancestral Supplements. Ancestral Supplements provides New Zealand-sourced nose-to-tail organ meats and bone marrow and bovine tracheal cartilage in simple, convenient gelatin capsules. The life's work of Dr. John F. Pruden showed that bovine tracheal cartilage had unique and powerful effects on wound healing, immune conditions, joint health, and other conditions considered to be treatment resistant to conventional therapies. All of these conditions were immune in nature with the exception of the wound healing studies. So according to Dr. Pruden, bovine cartilage closely resembles fetal mesenchyme. That's the primordial tissue from which muscle, bone, tendons, ligaments, skin, fat, and bone marrow, the heart of the immune system, all develop. Bovine tracheal cartilage provided concentrated amounts of connective tissue and immunoregulators and cartilage building blocks that are now missing from our modern diet. Visit ancestralsupplements.com to see what they can do for you. Ancestral Supplements is putting back in what the modern world has left out. And make plans to attend our Wise Traditions Conference this November, the 15th through the 17th, just north of Dallas, Texas. It is the place to be to enjoy nutritious and delicious food and learn all the healing wisdom, make friends who care about the same things you do, and be inspired. Just go to wisetraditions.org and sign up today using the coupon code WT Podcast. This coupon code is only for podcast listeners and it will save you $20 off of your registration. That's WT Podcast. The Wise Traditions Conference is where ancestral wisdom meets modern science. Well, why don't you dive into a couple more tips before we wrap up?
So now I know how my guests feel because I have so much I want to share, but I will try to summarize. One of my favorite tips has come within the last year, and this one really surprised me, Marisa. It actually has to do with the sun. So all these years I've been like, yes, eat the Wise Traditions diet. I'm still all about that. But what I did not know is that the mitochondria in our cells, these are little engines that kind of keep our body functioning properly, 2/3 of their energy comes from the sun and 1/3 comes from food. In other words, it is just as critical, if not more so, for us to get exposed to the sun to give that energy to the mitochondria as it is for us to eat well. So this is mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing. And so what I've started doing, at least, is taking my meals outside as much as possible. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know, we have a little back patio. It's not fancy. I live in the city, you know, but we do what we can. And we do that to promote good digestion, to synthesize the vitamin D from the sun, to energize that mitochondria. And I just can't get over how good I feel letting my body get its energy from the sun. I've also incorporated a tip I got from my friend Thaddeus Owen, who's the primal hacker, who I had on a show, I think it was called Biohacking Your Health. And he talked about getting the early morning sunrise sun. I believe if we get out there within the first 30 to 45 minutes of that morning sunrise, we get our circadian rhythm sets and we get light from the sun that doesn't include the UVA or UVB spectrum. So what that means is we're kind of getting a protective exposure to the sun that helps us bear the sun later in the day, because I'm also a fan of no sunscreen. So I could go on and on about this, but I just want to suffice it to say, I, who have always felt healthy kind of all along, to be honest with you, feel better than ever because of this happy habit I have of getting out in that morning sun and getting out in the sun as much as possible. It is amazing. It is just life transforming. And I used to be a night owl. I used to stay up late working on my computer, getting podcasts out probably and blogging and stuff like that. And now I go to bed earlier. My sleep is more efficient. It is deeper and more profound. And I'm leaner. I feel like I'm leaner and I'm working out the same amount. So it is just mind blowing. So my next tip is, get that sunrise, and it beats screen rise any day of the week. So if you're one of those people who just grabs your phone and starts scrolling through social media or checking your emails, no, baby, you got to get out in that sun and you will feel a difference. Just commit to it. This is what Thaddeus told me, and I started doing it. I was blown away. Commit to it for about 3 weeks and tell me if it didn't make a difference.
Nice. Okay, educate yourself, embrace real food and eliminate those processed foods, and get outside for at least 3 weeks and tell us if you didn't notice a difference. You got any more top tips you want to share?
I'll share one more just because I can't help myself. It is move. I'll never forget when I interviewed Philip Weeks, and he was one of the early episodes. He's from England, so I was just so charmed by his accent. But he had written some book about health, and he said, Hilda, all indigenous cultures had movement. He said, but get this, it wasn't exercise per se. It's not like they were grabbing logs, you know what I mean, and doing bicep curls or tricep presses or bench presses. No, they were moving, of course, as part of their daily rhythm and chores that they had to do, but they were also dancing. And I love that. That resonated with me because I'm Latina. I love to dance. And I was like, yes, this makes sense. Now, in the context of our modern world, do we need to take time to exercise and be specific and intentional about it? Absolutely. Like I actually do lead exercise classes with Body and Soul. I, do push-ups every day pretty much and pull-ups because I want to stay strong. And physical labor isn't a part of my day-to-day life, unfortunately.
Right.
Now, it may be for some of these listeners. I love you, all my friends who are listening, who live off the grid or have your chores on the farm. I think that's fantastic. But I currently don't live that way. So I do need to be intentional. The main thing is to move because our bodies were meant to. In other words, we don't just fuel ourselves with good food because it tastes good and we want everything to work right. And both of those things will be true. But we're fueling ourselves for a purpose. And it is to move. It is to be able to walk with our dog or be with our grandchildren or lift our children and put them on our shoulders when we're going to a park. You know what I mean? So we are supposed to be fit, not just to be buff and to show off, but fit functionally. So I just want to encourage people to move. Another one of my favorite podcast guests was Daryl Edwards, who's the guy who came up with Primal Play. And he says, you got to move like an animal. So I've actually bought his deck of cards and his book on animal moves. And I just think it's fascinating. It makes sense to me too, that we should move in ways that are natural to our bodies. So there's a lot to explore and unpack, and time won't let us get into it all. But I definitely just want to tell people, whatever you do, don't just sit around. Get out of that office, get moving, and just have fun. That's part of life, is playing and enjoying and moving.
Oh, absolutely. You inspire me, and I find it so energizing just to hear what you're doing for fun and what you're doing to move. And this is the time of year, if you live in the United States, and we just have great weather right now, and we should take advantage of that and spend time with all generations playing outdoors. Hilda, thank you so much for that. And I think it's time for the official wrap-up question everybody's probably wondering. So if the listener could do one thing to improve their health, Hilda, what would you recommend that they do?
Oh my gosh, Marisa, I'm actually about to cry because my own answer is surprising me. I have over 120 or like I said, 190 things to give you. And I was thinking about saying something related to getting outside, which I do think is critical. But I actually am going to go a little spiritual here because we are comprised of mind, body, and spirit. And I recommend for people to explore that facet of their lives. There is much more to us than meets the eye. And the longer I live, the more I'm convinced of the importance of a spiritual practice. I personally read my Bible every day. I pray. I'm connected with a community that encourages me in my faith. And I really think this is really important because you can do everything to make your body strong, But if your spirit is flagging, you're going to have an unhappy life. You're going to be missing most of the joy that's out there. So I definitely recommend that people look for a way to incorporate a spiritual practice in their life, and that will help them live life to the fullest.
You gave me chills, Hilda. Thank you so much for taking us there. I think it's so valuable to hear just how important that is in your life, because sometimes we forget in the modern world about those foundational principles that really enrich us and keep us healthy. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And can I say one more word of encouragement to the audience?
Please.
Well, I just want to say, you guys, don't get overwhelmed, because I feel like there are so many things flying at us all the time. And even if we applied every single one thing that a person said on this show, like it would just be so much at once. Just pick one thing. That's actually why I started the one thing, because I thought if we could just do one thing. So even on this episode, pick one of the 5 or 6 things I mentioned and just try to apply that. And then later on do another. I spent a whole year incorporating butter into our family's diet. And then the next year it was like, okay, let's get less processed foods, less chips and things. And so I took my time, and it was lasting change. So I just want to offer that word of encouragement as well.
Oh, that's great advice. And if anyone wants to keep learning more about Hilda, where should they find you?
They can obviously find me on this podcast, the Wise Traditions podcast, which is so much fun. They can follow me at Holistic Hilda on Instagram. And stay tuned, because I have something special cooking up for the amazing trip to Australia I'll be taking this September. So I am looking for ways to continue to bring valuable ancestral health information to all people everywhere. So stick close, you guys.
Oh, awesome. I'll be following for sure. Hilda, it was my pleasure to interview you today and flip the tables so we can learn more about you. And I can't wait to talk again.
Marisa, you're the sweetest. Thanks so much.
Our guest today was Holistic Hilda, Hilda Labrada Gore. For more from Hilda, visit her website at holistichilda.com. And you can find me, Marisa Moon. I'm on Instagram at Marisa_Moon_, or you can listen to my podcast called The Foundation of Wellness. For the show notes for this episode and every episode of the Wise Traditions podcast, just head over to the website at westinaprice.org. Oh, and stay tuned for a couple more of those testimonials. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Thanks for having me be a guest host this week. It was a privilege, and I can't wait to talk to you again. Bye.
Hello again. I'm Rose Manalo from the Philippines. This feedback is about the Wise Traditions podcast, for which I have been a subscriber for almost 2 years. I'm a survivor of severe depression, and I'm now helping people with depression. Hence, the episodes I love the most are those that offer more information about depression, such as those by Dr. Kelly Brogan and Dr. Natasha McBride. And so I've never missed out on any of the episodes guested by Miss Sally Fallon Morel. She's my favorite. But among the topics she discussed on the show, I love the most the one titled How to Have the Healthiest Babies. I have shared that content to my nieces who were recently pregnant. The podcast is a big help in my efforts to disseminate health information, most especially about mental health. It's very engaging, and the host, Miss Hilda, is one of the best there is in the podcasting world, I think. She's very articulate and she has perfect timing, really. But what I like the most about her style of hosting is how she seems to absorb the content and reacts to the speaker, and I feel I'm with her and she's reacting as myself and asking my own questions. So Wise Traditions podcast, keep it up. You're helping so many of us out here. Thank you so much.
I've got 3 little kids, so I have very little time to sit down and read. However, I have lots of time doing chores or driving the kids here and there, and the Wise Traditions podcast has become my number one source of information on real food and healthy living. And I'm so grateful for the work that Hilda is doing and that the Weston A. Price Foundation is doing to bring this information to moms like me and to present it in ways that we can really access it and to learn from it.
Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. The content on this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice. On behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation, thanks for listening. We have many free resources to support you on your health journey. Visit westonaprice.org to find podcasts, articles, videos, and more. You can also find a local chapter near you for help in finding sources of great food. We invite you to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism by becoming a member. Thanks again, and take care.